Keaton Energy is a smaller coal company with a price-to-earnings ratio of 9, a market cap of 343 million rand. Keaton operates a sizable mine in the Delmas area and also acquired anthracite mines in KZN last year. It currently pays no dividends. It's even worse looking than Coal of Africa. Oh no, I was still looking at Coal of Africa.
Well, the
Keaton Energy is a little bit better actually.
Yeah, not quite as big a fall. I think not quite as high a high, because it didn't attract the same kind of hype and hoopla back at the sort of height of the commodity market. Story here is Paul Miller, ex-Nedbank corporate financier, very good operator, good talker too, came up with this thing, put the assets together, listed it on the market exchange, did nicely, some good sort of
established... What, did that happen in about 2009?
Yeah, well, before that, 07, 08.
So at 14 Rand or so?
They've got a nice operation, the one that's you referred to there in Delmas. I think it's called Fontaine or something. It's a mine which has a thick seam of what they call 5-star coal, which again, for some reason is useful, much higher margin used in anthracitic sort of exported to Brazil. And, you know, the sort of high-grade anthracite type coal is very valuable. And if you can find some of that in amongst a bunch of other coal that you sell to Eskom or export, then that's very good. Unfortunately, though, it's had a bit of management changes. Paul Miller left. He was replaced briefly by a guy called Rowan Costel. He then left after 3 or 4 months.
Was he a good talker as well?
Not quite as good a talker as Paul Miller, but still good at talking. I haven't heard the new CEO, who's a woman whose name is Mandy Glad. I haven't heard her talking. Maybe she's very, very good at talking. But it's, you know, the market never really likes this. There was some talk they were going to do a capital raising. No word of that, so they're obviously not happy with the price at which they'd have to do it.
Let's get your view on Keaton Energy. Do you know anything about Mandy Glad?
I don't. You know, we have to still speak to her and we'll probably go see them in the next month or two. But, you know, she's picking up quite a difficult business.
Why have you got to go and speak to them? Have you been burnt by this one?
No, we do hold some Keatons. But, you know, we always go see the management when we can.
I see, just checking.
But, you know, they did come to market last year for some stock. I think it was around 3 Rand. So there was a bit of an uptake, and then the share price has dropped since then. But you know, their coal that they have are not these massive seams that are that easy to mine. So it's not the same quality asset as you'll find in Coal of Africa. They've also had problems with electricity, Eskom. So they don't have consistent electricity from Eskom. That's been a problem. And then also they had quite a lot of strikes last year in October, November, December, which was not in the earnings of December. So I'd like to wait to see the earnings that come out in March now. They closed in March, so we should be getting them in the next month. And then I'll take a look at it again. You know, if we have a slight drop-off because the earnings are not so good, but the story's better, and they've consolidated, then we'll look at it. But I'm going to wait for those earnings.
Paul, let's just look at the reverse here. I mean, a lot of these stocks, if the coal price recovers dramatically, then we'll see the follow-through into the underlying stocks.
Absolutely. And they don't, it's not just a one-mine story. They also have some anthracite mines in KwaZulu-Natal. I think it's called Valkrans. And those are easier to activate. In other words, you don't have to do so much capex. You can drive in the side of the mountain there.
You would get extensive leverage, though, from the coal price, wouldn't you?
But that's the story we know about commodities, is that it is a story of confidence. So, I mean, the way it looks to me, the global markets at the moment are a bit twitchy, but it's because of funny external things like Cyprus and bombers in Boston. And, you know, I think the overlying story of economic recovery has been lost in amongst all of this negative noise.
Well, we're still seeing patchy US jobs data. It's not as though it's a bed of roses out there. I don't know, Rob, how you feel.
It's not a bed of roses, but it's far better than we were last year at this time when it looked like the Europe would break up and Greece would be out. So,
although, gentlemen, I remind you, unemployment is hedging further and further, or edging further and further higher across the board. So, point taken. We don't want to get into an economic debate now, but just bear in mind the unemployment rate.
I mean, there is leverage, as you said earlier, and you know, it's similar to the gold miners here. You know, if that gold price moves up, you know, are people going to come back? And the moment the headwinds are just not are too strong and are just pushing people away from these sectors. And coal's the same. So, you know, you have to wait for the impetus to come back into these coal miners.
So how much lower can these stocks go? Because if you wanted to bet on the upside, and ultimately that it will happen because of the cyclicality of the world, etc., then surely you could buy them at such low levels.
Yeah, but remember, we're talking about fairly small companies with operational risk related to their operations. really they live from one month to the next. So strike, further negativity around labor is
So you
possible.
say that the risk that they may not survive is too great.
Well, I'm not sure about survival because these are, fairly sizable companies, but I think they could have tough times in which they could lose money and be forced to write down assets and that sort of thing.
Yeah. They need to have cash on their balance sheets, and that would be my call on which one to choose. If they've got enough cash to hold them through another 6 months, then I would go into them. If they're battling on cash, then you have to stay away until it recovers.
Does Keaton have cash?
They're cash generative. I wouldn't say they can sustain a year of poor pricing and no exports.
Hot or not on Keaton?
No. Not
Hot or
much.
not on Keaton?
No.